The tense silence in the conference room pressed against my eardrums as Victoria, our vice president, slammed her palm on the glass table. All 100 employees sat motionless under the harsh lighting. Even the usual keyboard tappers and pen clickers were still. Every breath felt audible. "Stand up right now and apologize to my daughter for your incompetence or clean out your desk," Victoria announced, her voice bouncing off the walls of our company main hall. Her daughter, Chloe, hired 8 months ago and mysteriously promoted to senior manager last week, sat beside the executive team with a slight smirk playing at her lips. My heart hammered against my ribs as all eyes turned to me. I slowly rose from my chair, the metal legs scraping against the floor in the dead silence. The walk to the front felt endless, each step echoing like a countdown timer on my career. Victoria smiled, anticipating my humiliation. She thought she had me trapped. She believed I would crumble under the weight of public shame rather than lose the job I had held for 18 years. She had never really known me at all. I connected my personal device to the display system. The projector hummed to life. "I believe this will clarify the situation," I said, my voice quiet but clear. Victoria's smile vanished when I did not immediately launch into an apology. Instead, I tapped the screen. Her daughter's voice filled the room. "Mom, I totally botched the Harrington presentation. I mixed up their financial assessment with our internal projections. But do not worry, I told everyone it was all his fault." Then Victoria's unmistakable voice. "Perfect, darling. Keep blaming him for everything. Once this merger goes through, we will restructure the entire department anyway. Just hold tight until our bonus is clear." Shocked gasps rippled through the room. Victoria lunged toward me, her heels stabbing the carpet. "That is private." "Turn that off immediately," she shouted, reaching for my device. Richard, our chief executive officer, held up his hand. "Continue," he said, his expression hardening. I nodded and played the next recording. "Just delete his slides before the investor meeting," Victoria instructed. "Say there was a technical issue. We need the board to see only your version of the proposal." "But what if someone asks questions I cannot answer?" Chloe whined. "Then you look at him and say, perhaps you can explain why your data did not support this conclusion. Make him look unprepared." With each new recording, Victoria's face lost color. Chloe sank lower in her seat, no longer smirking, but staring at her trembling hands. Richard stood slowly. "How long has this been happening?" I met his eyes directly. "Since Chloe was hired, I have dated copies of my original reports alongside the altered versions she submitted under her name. And this is not just my department. I have spoken with 4 former employees who experienced similar treatment before being pushed out." The room remained absolutely still as I disconnected my device and returned to my seat. Victoria stood frozen at the front, her mouth opening and closing without sound. But I knew this was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. Now let me tell you how this entire nightmare began. My name is David, and until 8 months ago, I was the rising star of our analytics department. I am 48 years old and had spent 18 years building my reputation through meticulous work and innovative strategies. My colleagues respected me. Upper management consulted me. Clients specifically requested me for their projects. Then Victoria hired her daughter. I remember Chloe's first day. She wore a designer outfit and introduced herself by announcing she had graduated from an elite university with honors. Later, I discovered she had barely passed and had been on academic probation twice. "David, you will be mentoring Chloe," Victoria announced during a department meeting 4 days after Chloe started. "Show her everything you know." I noticed several colleagues exchanging glances. Everyone understood what mentoring the boss's daughter meant, babysitting an entitled newcomer while maintaining my full workload. That afternoon, Chloe sat beside my desk, scrolling through her phone while I explained our data analysis processes. "This is so boring," she sighed after 12 minutes. "Cannot you just give me the summary?" "Understanding the methodology is important," I explained. "Otherwise, you will miss crucial patterns in the data." "Otherwise what?" "My mom runs this department. I do not need to understand every little detail. I should have recognized the warning sign, but I still believed in merit and hard work. I still believed the system would reward competence. What a fool I was! That night I made a decision. I would protect myself by documenting everything. I began keeping my device nearby during meetings and saving every version of my work with digital timestamps. Not for revenge, but for survival. The next day, I watched in silent fury as Chloe presented her alternative analysis to the board, an almost exact copy of my work from 4 months earlier, but with the risk factors minimized and the profit projections inflated. "I am concerned about the analysis David prepared," she said, flashing a concerned look at the board members. "It is unnecessarily pessimistic and could jeopardize this merger." I waited for anyone to recognize my previous work, but no one did, or if they did, they said nothing. After the meeting, Richard called me into his office. "David, I am concerned about your recent work. Chloe's analysis seems much more aligned with our goals." "Sir, the analysis she presented was based on outdated information. The current market conditions do not support those projections." "Are you suggesting you understand the market better than our senior manager?" he interrupted, nodding toward Chloe's newly assigned title on the organization chart. I stared at him speechless. Senior manager? Chloe had been with the company for less than 8 months and had contributed exactly nothing of value. "No, sir," I finally managed to say. "I will review my approach." For the next 3 weeks, I gathered evidence methodically. I recovered original emails from server backups. I compared document versions with their altered counterparts. I recorded conversations when legal in our jurisdiction, and I reached out to former employees who had left under similar circumstances. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. This was not just about Chloe. Victoria had been systematically pushing out talented employees who might threaten her position or who refused to play along with her schemes. She had built a network of loyalty, not through respect, but through fear and favoritism. Then came the week of the all-staff meeting. The Harrington deal was proceeding based on Chloe's flawed analysis, and problems were emerging that I had predicted in my original report. Rather than acknowledge these issues, Victoria decided to find a scapegoat: me. The morning before the all-staff meeting, she cornered me in the elevator. "Tomorrow's meeting will not be pleasant for you," she said with a tight smile. "But if you publicly apologize for your mistakes and acknowledge Chloe's superior work, I might consider keeping you in a reduced capacity." I looked her directly in the eyes. "And if I do not, then empty your desk before you leave today. Your choice." The elevator doors opened and she stepped out confident in her victory. She had no idea what was coming. That night I could not sleep. My career, my reputation, my future, everything I had worked for hung in the balance. Was I really prepared to risk it all? As dawn broke, I made the call that would change everything. "Hello," the voice was groggy with sleep. "Eleanor, it is David. I am sorry to call so early, but I need your help." Eleanor had been our largest investor for years, though she rarely attended company functions. I had worked directly with her on several projects before Victoria took over the department. "David, is everything all right?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "and I need to show you why." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the office. I arrived early, my laptop and files arranged neatly on the table. When Eleanor walked in, I almost did not recognize her completely. Gone was the casual investor who preferred to work behind the scenes. This woman moved with purpose, her eyes sharp and assessing. "You have 15 minutes, she said, sliding into the booth. "Use them well." I opened my laptop and played the recordings. I showed her the original reports alongside the altered versions. I explained the pattern of sabotage and the threatened careers. Eleanor listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she closed her notebook and studied me. "Why come to me and not Human Resources or Richard directly?" "Because Human Resources reports to Victoria and Richard has been dismissing concerns about her for months. You are the only person with enough influence who might actually care about what is happening." She nodded slowly. "And what do you want from me exactly?" "Attend today's all-staff meeting. Witness what happens, then decide if this company is being led the way you thought when you invested in it." Eleanor checked her watch. "I will make some calls. Be ready." I arrived at the office an hour before the meeting, my stomach tight with anxiety. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed unfamiliar faces in suits, speaking quietly with Richard in his office. The glass walls did not allow me to hear their conversation, but their serious expressions told me enough. My desk phone rang. "David." Richard's voice was clipped. "Come to my office now." My legs felt wooden as I walked across the floor. Every eye tracked my movement, speculation rippling through the department. They all expected today to be my last day. Richard was not alone when I entered. 4 members of the board and a woman I did not recognize sat with him. Eleanor was nowhere to be seen. "Close the door," Richard said. I did as instructed, fighting to keep my breathing even. "These are some serious accusations you have made." He began tapping a folder on his desk. "Victoria has been with this company for 15 years. 14 years and 8 months," corrected one of the board members, "and she has generated significant growth." "Yes," I agreed. "She has by taking credit for other people's work and eliminating anyone who threatens her position." The unknown woman leaned forward. "I am Rebecca from Legal Matters. We have reviewed the materials you provided to Miss Eleanor. While concerning recordings made without consent can be problematic from a legal standpoint." My heart sank. They were going to protect Victoria. "However," Rebecca continued, "the documentation of altered reports and the testimonies from former employees present a pattern that cannot be ignored." Richard sighed heavily. "We are in a difficult position. The Harrington merger is proceeding based on projections that, if I understand correctly, may be fundamentally flawed." "They are," I confirmed. "But there is still time to adjust our approach if we act quickly." The board members exchanged glances. "The all-staff meeting begins in 25 minutes. Victoria expects to publicly discipline you, after which we would announce Chloe's promotion to department director." "And now?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Now we want to see exactly how far they will go." Richard said, "You will attend the meeting as planned. Let Victoria make her accusations. Respond as you see fit." "You are using me as bait," I realized. "We are giving you the opportunity to defend yourself publicly." The board member corrected, "Something you have earned." As they laid out the plan, I realized I was walking into a minefield. If Victoria felt threatened, there was no telling what she might do or say. My evidence might not be enough. My career might still end today, but at least I would go down fighting. The main hall filled quickly as employees filed in for the mandatory all-staff meeting. I took a seat near the back, ignoring the whispers and sidelong glances. Chloe sat with the executive team at the front, her posture radiating confidence. Victoria stood at the podium reviewing her notes, occasionally looking up to scan the room. Her eyes found mine. She smiled. Richard opened the meeting with standard announcements about quarterly goals and upcoming events. Then he turned the floor over to Victoria. "Thank you, Richard. Before we discuss department updates, there is a personnel matter we need to address." Her voice carried easily across the room. "Over the past several months, we have experienced concerning issues with the quality of work coming from our analytics team, specifically work overseen by David." A murmur rippled through the audience. Most recently, his flawed analysis of the Harrington opportunity nearly derailed an important merger. Fortunately, our senior manager, Chloe, identified the problems and provided a corrected assessment. This pattern of undermining company initiatives cannot continue. Victoria's gaze swept the room. "David, please stand." And there it was, the moment everything had led toward. I rose slowly from my seat, aware of every eye in the room turning to me. "Accountability is a core value at this company," Victoria continued. "We all make mistakes, but refusing to acknowledge them is unacceptable. Stand up right now and apologize to my daughter for your incompetence or clean out your desk." The silence that followed felt suffocating. I took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room. The sound of my footsteps unnaturally loud. Instead of taking position at the podium, I moved to the computer station, controlling the room's display system. "I believe this will clarify the situation," I said, connecting my device. What happened next unfolded exactly as I described earlier. The recordings playing, Victoria's fury, Richard's intervention. But what I did not mention was what happened after I played the last recording. "You will never work in this industry again," Victoria shouted, her composure completely shattered. "Do you have any idea who my friends are? Who my husband plays golf with others? You are finished. That is enough," interrupted a voice from the back. Every head turned as Eleanor walked forward, accompanied by 2 people I recognized from the morning news. Representatives from the regulatory commission that oversaw our industry. This meeting was supposed to be internal. Victoria sputtered. "I invited them," Richard said coldly. After receiving some concerning information yesterday, Victoria's face drained of color as she realized that trap she had walked into accomplish. She turned to Chloe, who looked equally panicked. "This is a misunderstanding," Victoria insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "Those recordings are taken out of context. David has been underperforming for months. Ask anyone in his department." "Actually," said a quiet voice from the third row. "That is not true." Michael, a junior analyst I had barely spoken to in weeks, stood up. "David trained me when I started. Everything I know about data integrity came from him. But 2 months ago, Victoria told me to rework David's market assessment to show different conclusions. When I refused, I was removed from the Harrington team." One by one, other colleagues stood up. Each had a story, pressure to alter data, instructions to exclude David from meetings, directives to report his non-existent mistakes. Victoria looked wildly around the room, her carefully constructed empire crumbling before her eyes. "Chloe, tell them. Tell them how David tried to sabotage you." All eyes turned to Chloe, who seemed to shrink in her chair. "I just did what you told me to, Mom." The regulatory representatives moved forward. "Miss Victoria, we would like to speak with you privately about these allegations, particularly as they relate to the financial projections presented to shareholders." Victoria grabbed her daughter's arm. "Say nothing without our lawyer present," she hissed. Then, straightening her jacket, she addressed the room with forced dignity. "This is a witch hunt based on misleading evidence. The truth will come out." As they were escorted from the hall, Richard stepped to the podium. "This meeting is adjourned. Department heads, please join me in the conference room immediately. Everyone else, take an early lunch. We will send further communication this afternoon." People filed out in stunned silence, casting glances at me as they passed. Some offered quiet words of support. Others looked away, perhaps ashamed of their own complicity. I remained at the front, disconnecting my device with trembling hands. Had I won, or had I just destroyed my career along with Victoria's? Richard approached as the room emptied. "That took courage," he said quietly, "more than I have shown clearly." "My office 30 minutes, I nodded, gathering my things. As I headed for the door, I noticed someone waiting. "Eleanor, walk with me," she said. We moved through the empty corridors in silence, until we reached a small courtyard at the center of the building. Eleanor sat on a bench and gestured for me to join her completely. "You realize what happens now, do you not?" she asked. I shook my head. I honestly did not think beyond today. "The Harrington merger will need to be reevaluated based on accurate projections. The executive team will be scrutinized. The board will implement new oversight, and someone will need to manage this transition." "Richard seems capable," I offered. Eleanor gave me a measured look. Richard knew. "David. Maybe not everything, but enough. He chose to look away because Victoria's department appeared successful on paper." My stomach dropped as the implications sank in. "So what happens now?" I asked. "That depends largely on what you do next," Eleanor replied, standing up. "Our meeting with Richard should be illuminating. I suggest you consider carefully what you want." As she walked away, my mind raced through possibilities. I had exposed Victoria and Chloe, but the rot might run deeper. Had I started something I could not control? Was I now a liability to people even more powerful than Victoria? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Parking garage. Level 3. 10 minutes. Come alone if you want the full story." I stared at the screen, a chill creeping up my spine. This was not over, not by a long shot. I stood in the parking garage, my footsteps echoing between concrete pillars. Level 3 was nearly empty at this hour. Most employees were still in the building, discussing the morning's events. My heart pounded as I scanned the dimly lit space. "Over here." I turned to see Sarah, our head of information technology security, leaning against a support column. In 5 years, we had barely exchanged more than pleasantries. "You sent the text?" I asked, approaching cautiously. Sarah nodded, glancing toward the elevator. "We do not have much time. I need to show you something before your meeting with Richard." She pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. 3 months ago, Victoria requested a security audit of all department communications. The official reason was protecting proprietary information. The real reason was this. She handed me the tablet. On screen was a list of search parameters. David plus mistake, David plus error, David plus problem, David plus disagree. She was building a case against you. Sarah explained, using our security systems to mine for any negative reference to your work. I scrolled through the list, my stomach tightening. Is this legal matters? Gray area. But that is not all. She took back the tablet, swiping to a new screen. Victoria did not just target you. She has been collecting dirt on everyone she considers a threat, including Richard. The screen showed an email thread between Victoria and someone outside the company discussing details of Richard's messy divorce and financial difficulties. Blackmail? I whispered. Sarah nodded grimly. I think so. Richard has been making strange decisions for months. Now we know why. Why show me this? Why now? Because I am next on her list. Sarah's voice hardened. Last week, she demanded access to confidential personnel files. When I refused, she threatened my job. The elevator dinged in the distance. Go to your meeting, Sarah said, pocketing the tablet. But understand, Victoria has contingency plans. She is not going down alone. I headed back, my mind reeling. This was not just about me or even Chloe. Victoria had been constructing an elaborate web of control throughout the entire company. When I entered Richard's office, Eleanor was already seated alongside Rebecca from legal and 4 board members. Richard looked haggard, his earlier confidence replaced with obvious anxiety. David, thank you for joining us, he began, his voice strained. We have been discussing next steps. Before we continue, Eleanor interjected, I would like to address the elephant in the room. Richard, how long have you known about Victoria's methods? He flinched. I had concerns, but never concrete evidence. That is not what I asked. Eleanor pressed. Richard loosened his tie. She had information, personal information that could have damaged my position here. I did not actively support her actions, but I looked away more often than I should have. The air in the room felt suddenly heavy. And now, I asked, thinking of Sarah's revelation. Now we have a serious problem, said one of the board members, introducing himself as William. The Harrington merger was predicated on growth projections that appear to be fabricated. Our shareholders were misled. The Regulatory Commission is already asking questions. Rebecca nodded grimly. We are facing possible securities violations. We need to demonstrate that we are addressing the problem immediately and transparently. Which brings us to you, David, Eleanor said. We would like you to lead the analytics department effective immediately and prepare an accurate assessment of the Harrington situation. I should have felt triumphant instead. Suspicion crept through me. Why me? Why now? William exchanged glances with the other board member. Frankly, because you are the only one with both the expertise and the credibility. You were right about the projections. You stood up when others would not. And Richard added reluctantly, because we need someone squeaky clean to present to the regulators. Someone who can be the face of our rehabilitation. There it was the truth. They were not championing me. They were using me as a shield. What about Victoria? I asked. She has been suspended pending investigation, Rebecca explained. Her company accounts are locked, though she is threatening legal action for defamation. And Chloe resigned 25 minutes ago, cleared out her desk while sobbing about how unfair everything is. I considered my options. I could walk away, find another job, leave this toxic environment behind. But that would mean abandoning the colleagues who had just found the courage to speak up. It would mean letting Victoria's remaining allies control the narrative. I will lead the department temporarily, I said carefully, but I want full access to all communications and reports from the past year. No restrictions, Richard shifted uncomfortably. Some of those communications might contain sensitive everything, I interrupted, or I walked straight to the Regulatory Commission. Eleanor smiled slightly. I think that is reasonable. The next 3 weeks were the most intense of my career. By day, I led a team rebuilding our analytics from the ground up. By night, I combed through the mountain of data Sarah helped me access. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Victoria had not just targeted me. She had systematically undermined at least 9 promising employees over the past 4 years. She had altered financial projections to ensure her department always hit targets while others struggled. She had cultivated relationships with board members through carefully orchestrated coincidental meetings. Most disturbing were her contingency plans. Hidden in encrypted folders were files on every executive and board member, personal information, financial details, private communications. She had leverage on everyone, including, I discovered with a chill, Eleanor. Meanwhile, the company attempted damage control. Richard made public statements about governance improvements and renewed commitment to integrity. The board established an ethics committee. Human Resources launched a review of promotion practices. On the surface, change was happening. Beneath it, power was simply shifting hands. 2 days before the rescheduled board meeting on the Harrington merger, Victoria reached out. Her message was simple. Coffee tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning. The place across the street. Against my better judgment, I went. She looked different. Softer somehow without her usual power suit and perfect makeup, but her eyes remained calculating. You have made quite an impression, she said after our drinks arrived. The board is singing your praises. Richard calls you his most valued executive. Quite a turnaround. I said nothing. Waiting. They are using you, you know, she continued. Once the regulatory heat dies down, you will be quietly moved aside. That is how it works. Is that why you asked me here? To share career advice? Victoria smiled thinly. I am here to make a deal. I have information. Information that would interest the Regulatory Commission immensely. Information about how long the board has actually known about the projection discrepancies. My heart raced. If the board had known before, I exposed Victoria. What do you want? A statement from you clarifying that my daughter was manipulated, that she believed the projections she presented were accurate. She is young, David. Do not destroy her future. And in return, I share what I know. You become not just the whistleblower who caught the bad apple, but the one who exposed the systemic rot. Your position becomes untouchable. It was tempting, so tempting, but something felt wrong. I will think about it, I said, standing to leave. Do not think too long, Victoria called after me. The board meets tomorrow. Back at the office, I found Sarah waiting by my door. You met with Victoria, she said. It was not a question. How did you building security still alerts me to her presence? What did she want? I explained the offer. Sarah's expression darkened. It is a trap, she said flatly. She is recording everything now, trying to catch someone, anyone, in a conspiracy. She is desperate. That night, I barely slept, turning over possibilities in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The boardroom was tense as executives and board members gathered for the critical meeting. The Harrington representatives attended virtually, their faces serious on the large screen at the end of the table. Richard opened with pleasantries, then turned to me. David, please present your revised analysis. I stood and connected my device to the display system, just as I had 3 weeks earlier in the all-staff meeting. But this time, instead of playing recordings, I showed a comprehensive timeline of the Harrington projections. As you can see, I explained the original projections from my team were accurate. The market conditions have not changed. What changed were the numbers presented to this board and to our shareholders. I clicked to the next slide. This manipulation was not the work of one person or even two. It required coordination across multiple departments and levels of authority. The room grew very still. Richard interrupted. We agreed to focus on the path forward, not dwell on past mistakes. Yes, I nodded. The path forward, which is why I have prepared 2 documents for distribution today. I placed a stack of folders on the table, sliding one to each person present. The first is my revised analysis of the Harrington merger, with honest projections and clear risk assessments. The second is my letter to the Regulatory Commission, detailing the systematic falsification of financial reports over the past 4 years, including who knew what and when. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Richard half rose from his chair. This is completely inappropriate, actually, said a voice from the doorway. It is exactly appropriate. Eleanor walked in, accompanied by 2 people in suits. These are representatives from the commission. They are here at my invitation. She took a seat beside me. David came to me last week with concerns that went far beyond Victoria's behavior. After reviewing his evidence, I contacted the commission directly. You cannot possibly believe, William began. What I believe, Eleanor cut in, is that this company has lost its way. And unlike some of you, I am not willing to sacrifice my reputation or freedom to protect a broken system. One of the commission representatives stepped forward. We will need statements from everyone. All electronic devices should remain in this room. No one leaves until we have secured all relevant materials. What followed was 8 hours of controlled chaos. Executives were questioned individually, files were copied, phones were examined. By evening, 4 board members had resigned, and Richard was placed on administrative leave. As I gathered my things to leave, Eleanor approached. "You never told me you were going to the commission," I said quietly. "You never told me you were gathering evidence against the board," she countered. "We both did what was necessary. What happens now?" "Now the company gets rebuilt from the ground up, with new leadership committed to actual integrity, not just the appearance of it." She handed me a card. "The interim chief executive officer would like to meet with you tomorrow. I suggested your name for a permanent position on the executive team." I stared at the card, but the recordings. My methods were not exactly by the book. Sometimes the only way to fight a corrupt system is to work outside it. Eleanor said, "You expose not just Victoria, but an entire culture of deception. That is the kind of courage we require." As we walked out together, I spotted Victoria in the parking lot, being escorted to her car by security. Our eyes met briefly. I expected to see hatred, but what I saw instead was something like respect. My revenge was not just exposing her or reclaiming my position. It was dismantling the entire system that made her behavior possible, where she had built power through secrets and fear. I would help build something transparent and fair. 3 months later, I sat in my new office, formerly Richard's, reviewing applications for our expanded analytics team. The Harrington merger had proceeded on honest terms. Our stock had taken a hit after the scandal broke, but was slowly recovering as investors responded to our new transparency initiatives. Most importantly, we had implemented a comprehensive whistleblower program, designed with input from those who had been victimized in the past. No one would ever again face what I had faced. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Lunch. I have updates on the security overhaul." I smiled, remembering how it all began. Not with a grand plan for revenge, but with a simple refusal to be silenced. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace justice stories. Have you ever witnessed corporate misconduct or had to stand up against workplace bullying? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth, no matter who does not want to hear it.